for the purposes of preliminary examination, I think that a 99.5% identification of this individual as the person who is in Exhibit 2 is enough for the people to...
What I really saw was the gun that was pointed directly at me.
When I saw the clip, there is no doubt in my mind that what I saw and what I would think that to be would be a firearm. Okay, so the people versus Kyle Zimmerman.
Your Honor, thank you, Your Honor. Alex Warren Green on behalf of Mr. Zimmerman. Mr. Zimmerman, could you please state your name for the court? Kyle Zimmerman. Michael Geddes. Mr. Zimmerman.
All right, very good. All right.
The preliminary examination, the people are ready to proceed. There are a couple preliminary housekeeping matters. We can address those for you.
Yes.
Just first and foremost, I'm not sure if the defense is calling witnesses. I know I have a number of witnesses. I think that's registration before. At this point, the defense does not plan to call any witnesses. We would likewise ask for sequestration.
All right, all witnesses are hereby ordered to question from the courtroom and should not discuss their testimony or impending testimony with any other witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. As a second matter, I informed Mr. Geddes as well as count 6 of felony firearm in relation to that bank robbery. Finally, Your Honor, I believe there is a stipulation as to prior felony conviction, that being the attempt robbery, the Third Circuit Court.
And so for the
felony in possession, I believe it's going to be
felony in possession, the predicate felony, you're stipulating this one does exist.
We would stipulate, Your Honor.
All right.
For exam purposes.
Understood.
I believe that's all the housekeeping matters I have before we begin testimony.
Anything additional for the defense?
Your Honor, I would just say, with respect to the potential of added counts, I related that to my point, the potential consequences that come along with that, but I have nothing further at this time.
All right. And I do, so that I know this isn't a surprise today because I recall it being mentioned at the last PCC.
And also just
as to the bank robbery, yes, sir. As to the bank robbery, yes.
But not as to the felony firearm you're indicating?
That is correct, Your Honor, but Mr. Cook told me this morning.
Okay.
And just to make clear, those counts are going to be added regardless if the defendant waived or held the exam.
Whether he waived or held.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. There being nothing else, call your first witness.
Melanie Law.
And please come forward and be sworn.
Please take a seat, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear in front of the test. Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so God. State and spell your first and last name for the record, please.
My name is Melanie Hoff. MELEHOFF.
All right. Very good. You may inquire.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Hoff. How are you? Ma'am, I want to draw your attention back to December 5th of 2025. Do you remember that day?
Of course.
And specifically, in the late morning, early afternoon, were you ever at a Chase Bank?
Yes.
Which Chase Bank were you at?
At Westgate.
Is that 24 West Stadium Boulevard? Is that here in Washtenaw County? What were you doing at the bank?
I went inside to ask the teller about the money, bills, the different kind of bills I wanted to get for withdrawing cash.
Did anything out of the ordinary happen while you were having that conversation?
The teller and I were discussing the bills, and the next thing I heard was, this is a holdup, give me your cash.
Were you able to see who said that?
Well, I turned and looked at the person. The person had on a mask and a hat, and what I really saw was the gun that was pointed directly at me.
What sort of gun was pointed at you?
Well, I'm not an expert, but, a pistol.
Okay.
Rifle.
Who was holding that gun?
The person who was holding up the bag.
That was the person that you made that exclamation prior?
Yeah,
Had you ever met that individual before?
no.
Can you describe what that individual was wearing?
Well, he had on one of those hat pulls over, big cap and the mask. And then he had, because it was December, a heavy coat.
What did this individual do with the gun?
He pointed it at me.
Did he make any statement other than the previous thing that you said?
Not that I can recall.
How long was the gun pointed at you?
Well, I sort of responded in fright, and I immediately removed myself and crouched behind a sign. So it was, I don't know, 1-2 minutes. I don't know, because I went around to the sign and
When you say it was 1-2 minutes, are you referring to the whole interaction or the amount of time the defendant, or I'm sorry, that this individual had the gun pointed at you?
no, sorry, I can't.
That's fine. What happened after this individual made that exclamation?
Well, I don't remember what I did, but witnesses told me I screamed.
So,
That would be hearsay, so
Okay, but
you go ahead.
I lost my voice.
do you remember how you felt when this was happening?
Scared.
Did you ever think at any point that that gun would be used against you?
Of course I did.
Do you know if that gun was loaded or not?
No idea.
I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, Your Honor.
That's fine.
Show defense counsel what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 2. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Anyone beginning who's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 2, please take a look at that document and tell me what it is.
That's the person who confronted me.
And is this photograph a fair and accurate reflection or photograph of the attire and the outfit that that individual was wearing that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, move to admit what's marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 2.
Any objection or what here?
No, Judge.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
I am a copy for the court. Permission to publish.
Yes.
How long was that individual in the bank that morning?
Sorry, I can't really tell you that answer.
Okay. Were you injured in any?
No.
Did this individual ever discharge the weapon?
What do you mean by this?
Did they ever shoot it, or did they ever?
No.
Oh. If I can have just 1 second, please, Your Honor.
Well, while you do that, I just want to clarify one thing. In the bank, I've never been in that bank. So are there a series of windows and you were at one of them?
Correct. And I there was nobody else at the other windows.
Okay.
And there were no other customers waiting in line. It was pretty empty.
Okay. Okay. And so you're at one of the windows talking to the teller,
Right.
and that's when what you described occurred.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Cook.
Nothing further for this witness. I would pass on.
All right. Nothing further. Cross-examination.
Good morning, Ms. Hoff. My name's Alex Warren. I represent Mr. Zimmerman in this case. Ms. Hoff, you described the person you saw at the bank that morning as a white male with a zip-up hoodie and a beanie. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. And you said that person produced a gun. You said they pointed it at you. Okay. And I'm not sure if you described it in your direct examination with the prosecutor, but you said the gun looked silver. Is that your recollection? Okay. And on your direct testimony, you said that the person said something to the effect of, "This is a holdup, give me the cash." Is that correct? Okay. You remember at the time of the incident being asked to provide a statement to the bank. Do you?
You mean afterwards?
Yes.
It's kind of a blur to me. After the incident and the person left, they just had me sit in a chair all by myself. And then somebody came probably 20 minutes to a half hour later, who was a representative of the bank, and they asked me questions, but I don't know if it was a statement per se.
Okay. You remember telling someone at the bank that you did not wish to give a statement because you weren't sure if you were in the right mindset, maybe?
Oh, no, I never said that.
Okay. You remember telling someone from the bank, and I don't want to mischaracterize what you did or didn't tell them, so correct me if I'm wrong. You remember telling them you weren't sure you could fill it out accurately at the time due to the stress of the incident?
I don't have any recollection of that. What I do have recollection of was that everything seemed to be taking a long time. And I just wanted to leave the bank and get home. And so they wanted me to talk to some, I don't know if it was a psychologist or whatever, but I said, I'm fine. I just want to go home. I have Pilates class at 1 and I wanted to. So I didn't, I remember denying psychological help, but I don't remember anything else.
You did talk to a police officer, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I know I talked to people afterwards. They called me on the phone. Because what happened that day, I can't remember all the specific details. I remember it took a long time for the police.
Okay. You remember telling the police officer that you were uncertain exactly what the white male with the zip-up hoodie said?
I don't recall.
Okay. If I showed you a written report from the officer you spoke to, do you think that might help refresh your recollection?
If you want to show it to me, that's fine.
Okay. Do you think that would help refresh your recall of what you told the officer?
Possibly.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach with that?
Right.
Thank you. Ms. Hoff, can you tell me if reviewing that refreshes your recollection when you've had an opportunity to do that?
I see that, but
May I approach you?
Right.
Ms. Hoff, did that refresh your recall of what?
particularly.
Okay. In this case, you were never asked to identify a suspect by being shown an array of pictures, were you?
Never asked because they had all the footage from the bank.
Sure. You were never brought to a police station and shown a lineup of people? Okay.
Is there any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you very much. You may step down.
I'll call Raven Roberts.
All right, ma'am, come forward to be sworn.
Will you take a seat, raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to follow the testimony about to give the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Absolutely. Can you spell your first and last name?
Name is Raven Roberts, RD.
You may inquire.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Roberts. How are you doing? Ma'am, I want to draw your attention back to December 5th, 2025. Do you remember that day? How were you employed on that day?
Chief Whiskey.
Do you remember which branch of the Chase Bank you worked for? Do you remember the address for that bank? Were you working that day? When were you working? At any points during that day, I'll phrase the question this way. Did anything out of the usual happen in the late morning, early afternoon of that day? What happened?
Almost not that nothing.
I want to walk backwards a little bit. When you say robbed at gunpoint, was this by an individual, a group of individuals? Who robbed you?
Just one.
When did that person arrive at the bank?
recall the exact.
Do you know when you first saw that individual in the bank? Was there anything about the individual that drew your attention to them before the robbery?
Person was covered with that.
When you say covered besides the eyes, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there a photo up there?
Yeah.
If you take a look at what's been admitted as People's Exhibit number 2, do you recognize who's in that photograph?
Yes.
Who is that?
Person.
What did that person do when they entered the bank before the robbery?
Something I couldn't really see what the person was called. Something.
What happened then?
After that, they came into the branch and came up to my window where the customer was standing and pulled out the gun and shake.
Do you know what type of gun this was? Was it a long gun or like a handgun? Do you know if that gun was loaded? Did they ever point the gun at you or anyone else? Who did they point the gun at? Did they point the gun at anyone else? Is there any cameras set up inside the bank that records what's going on in the bank?
Yes.
Do you know if any of those cameras captured this incident?
I'm sure.
If you were to see some of that footage, would you be able to recognize it? You can put me up, and I'm going to put up what's going to be marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 1 for authentication purposes. Ma'am, do you recognize this video? Or do you recognize what's in this video? How do you recognize it?
Station where I normally work.
And have you seen this video prior to testifying? And is this video a fair and accurate representation of what happened during this robbery? And I move to admit what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 1.
No objection.
No objection. Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Permission to publish?
Yes.
And for the record, this is a 9-second long video. I'm starting at the 1 second mark. I'm just going to play it through. How did you feel? What was going through your head when this individual told you that you were visible?
I was scared.
Did you do anything in response to being told that you were being robbed? Who else was around when this was happening? Do you know if that person yelled anything? What did they yell? In the video, we see the individual walk off the frame of the camera. What happened after that point?
He ran up.
Do you know where that individual ran to?
To the left of the building and through.
Was this individual able to actually get any money from the bank? Do you know if you saw them take anything from the bank? Were you injured in any way? All right, 1 second, please, Your Honor.
Wait.
That's the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Ms. Roberts. My name is Alex Warren Green. I represent Mr. Zimmerman in this case. Ms. Roberts, in this case, you completed a standard suspect description form that was provided by the bank you work for, right? Okay. You were not asked by the police to do a photo identification or an in-person identification in this case, were you? Okay. Your recall is that the suspect was 5'9".
I don't know.
Okay. You remember putting that on the suspect description form I referenced earlier? Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at that? Okay, Your Honor, may I approach with the... And Ms. Roberts, just let me know if that refreshes your recall. Would you agree that you at least noted the suspect was 5'9"?
Right.
Okay, so that was an approximation. You also noted that he was in his mid-50s, right?
Yes.
Okay. You did not indicate the suspect's eye color in that report, did you?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, if I may retrieve that report. Thank you. Ms. Roberts, the exhibit that was admitted as People's 2 is still in front of you, the photograph, right? Okay. You'd agree with me from that photograph, you can't tell what eye color that person has, right?
No.
They don't appear to be blue, do they?
No.
And they appear to be dark. Would you agree with that? Okay. The video that the prosecutor showed you on your direct examination, that was your entire interaction with the suspect at the register. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And from the time the suspect ran out of the branch to the time the police arrived, you'd agree that was about 3 minutes, right?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. Do you remember it being longer by any significant amount?
I don't recall.
All right. Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time.
I just have one question. You came up with a height of 5'9". Are there doorways that are marked with height? So that was your estimation as best you could. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Go ahead. Any,
No regret, Your Honor.
all right, ma'am. Thank you very much. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
Well, Detective Adam Ondrevik.
Sir, please come forward and be sworn.
See, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the affirmative testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thanks for your first and last name.
Detective Adam, ADAM Ondrovic, ONDROVICK.
Yeah, all right. You may inquire.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Detective. How are you doing? Detective, how are you employed?
I Tecumseh Police Department,
And in what capacity do you work for the Tecumseh Police Department?
detective first,
How long have you been a detective?
4 years.
Any previous law enforcement experience?
Was for Tecumseh 12 years. Prior to that, with the Lally County Sheriff's Office for 10 years.
So 22 years total, is my math correct?
Yes.
Were you asked to, or let me rephrase this question. Were you ever able to assist into an investigation related to a bank robbery that occurred December 5th of 2025 here in Washtenaw County?
Yes.
How were you able to assist with that investigation?
How I got involved was I was contacted by Kyle Zimmerman via text that there was,
Objection, Your Honor, as to
Your Honor, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted.
First state of mind as to what he did. So objections overruled. I'll take it for that.
so I was contacted and I was asked if I knew about the bank robbery. I did know already about the bank robbery because I was working that day. And it was sent out through our law enforcement contacts. And when I reviewed the images that were posted online, I immediately recognized who the suspect was.
And who did you recognize that individual as being?
Kyle Zimmerman.
Do you see that individual in the courtroom here today?
I do.
Can you please point to them and identify them by an article of clothing that they're wearing?
So, to read my left.
The record may reflect this witness has identified the defendant.
Record shall so reflect with that objection.
Sir, do you have a copy of People's Exhibit 2 in front of you by any chance on the counter there?
Oh,
Or have both copies? Because I think there was all.
probably do. Yes.
Sir, do you recognize People's Exhibit 2?
Yes, that is all of the solid bit.
And is that the individual you were able to recognize as the defendant?
Yes.
How do you know the defendant?
I've known Kyle for 45 entirely. First husband.
And what about that photograph led you to be able to identify the defendant?
The first thing was his eyes. First of his nose. I mean, I've known him for a long time and immediately I knew who it was.
You said he was your cousin. Were you two close?
We were younger.
How often would you say over the course of knowing the defendant, you interacted with him?
Well, I would say the last 20 years, it's been more in my professional capacity than it has been as a personal or for family.
I guess let me refine the question. Have you interacted with him as an adult or just when you were kids?
No, as in,
When was the last time prior to December 5th that you had seen the defendant?
I would probably say at a sporting event where his son, one of our, we have local football games, his son played on our football team, and I worked at the school resource officer.
When was that?
The year prior to this, so the fall of that summer. I mean,
So what this happened this year, or what year was it? I guess I could live in it, you know, that was the day, I can't remember.
So prior to December 5th, 2025, when was the last time you had seen the defendant?
I would say it was that fall, sometime at a football game.
So it had been a couple months, am I hearing correctly? Okay. Did anyone ask you to identify the defendant?
Sister asked me, I would look at.
Did law enforcement reach out to you prior to you reaching out to them about this case? If I can have one moment, please, Ron.
Pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Detective. My name is Alex Forengreen. I represent Mr. Zimmerman in this case. Detective, on direct examination, you said that Kyle's sister asked you to take a look at the picture. Is that correct?
She asked if I'd seen it.
Okay. Is Kyle's sister a law enforcement officer? So on December 9th, 2025, you left a voicemail for Detective Ross at the Ann Arbor Police Department. How did you call him directly?
Detective Van Alstine.
Okay.
I gave the officer in charge's phone number.
And that was after you saw a photo of the suspect in this alleged bank robbery, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you were 99.5% sure that the person in that photo was your cousin, right? Okay. And you said on direct examination, did you say you've known him for 40 years?
45.
Okay. Over 40 years, right? And, right.
Yes.
Okay. Another thing you mentioned is Kyle always wears glasses. Is that your recollection?
I have seen him without glasses. I worked in Long County Jail, and he did always have glasses, not married either.
Okay. The picture, is that still in front of you? People's Exhibit 2? Not wearing glasses in that picture. And he is wearing a mask that covers from kind of the tip of the nose and to underneath his chin. Is that accurate? And he's wearing a beanie hat that covers the hair and the eyebrows, right? You know Kyle to have blue eyes, right?
Yes, I mean, I don't know. I would say I would know what his eye color is right on the web, but
Okay. You can't conclude from that picture the person in that picture has blue eyes, right? Okay. Another thing you gave to the detective in charge was contact information for Kyle's dad, right? William Zimmerman?
yes, I did pass on family members' contact.
You provided information for William Zimmerman. Did you also provide information for Keenan Zimmerman?
Maybe a name. I definitely wouldn't have had any phone numbers. So.
You know a person named Keenan, Keenan Zimmerman, right?
That's his brother.
Okay. You'd agree Keenan is approximately 5'9" tall?
I can't say yes, but I don't know how tall he is.
Okay. When's the last time you saw Keenan?
Long time ago.
A long time,
15 years, probably.
over 15 years. Okay. You know if Keenan's shorter than Kyle?
Last I he was probably.
Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time.
All right.
Thank you, Detective.
Redirect.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Detective, have you ever seen the defendant wear sunglasses where you couldn't see the color of his eyes? Let me phrase it differently. Have you ever seen the defendant without being able to see his eyes? For example, wearing a baseball hat that covers his eyes.
Yeah, I've seen baseball hat before.
Were you able to recognize him without being able to see his eyes then? Nothing further. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I have nothing further.
All right. Thank you. Detective, thank you, sir. All right. Thank you.
And people call William Zimmerman.
All right. Sir, please come forward and be sworn.
Before you take a seat, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear in front of the testimony you about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Okay, have a seat. State and spell your first and last name.
William W-I-L-L-Y-M. Zimmerman, Z-I-M-M-E-R-M-A-N.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
All right.
Sir, do you know an individual by the name of Kyle Zimmerman?
Sir, my son,
You see that individual in the courtroom today?
I'm seated, sir, in a green suit.
The record may reflect this witness has identified the defendant.
The record shows so reflect without objection.
Sir, I want to draw your attention back to December of last year, specifically December 5th of 2025. Do you remember that day?
I believe I know the state.
Did you have any contact with the defendant on that day?
No.
Did you receive, or did anyone in your family receive any text messages from the defendant on that day?
Not from the defendant, I didn't. Family members? Yeah, the family members had received, his son received one.
Your Honor, I would object to what family members received. I don't think there's an adequate foundation. I believe it's hearsay.
Do you know of your own personal knowledge that those text messages were received?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see, yeah.
Overruled. Go ahead.
So you saw some text messages, and those text messages were sent by the defendant?
Yes.
Do you remember what those text messages said?
They stated about, so he'd done something really stupid or crazy. I believe he used the phrase crazy, and that he was, and then the life was over, and he was ready to want to know if the children do anything, anybody that may needed to be disposed of, I believe.
1 second, please, Your Honor. Pass the witness now.
Cross-examination.
Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Zimmerman. My name is Alex Warren Green. I represent Kyle Zimmerman in this case. Mr. Zimmerman, on your direct testimony, you told us that you had knowledge of text messages that were received by a family member. Okay. And none of those text messages said, I committed a bank robbery or an armed robbery, did they? Being Kyle's father, you know Kyle to have blue eyes, right?
Blue eyes?
Yes.
I don't know the color of his eyes. I haven't seen him that close recently. That's in green or blue, somewhere in it.
Okay. And Kyle has a brother, Keenan, right? Okay. Keenan is shorter than Kyle, is that accurate? Okay. About how tall is Keenan?
5'8".
Okay. I'm sorry, you said 5'7", 5'8" range. Okay.
At least about 6 inches short.
Okay. Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Sir, you may step down. Thank you.
People have no further witnesses and rest at this time.
Any witnesses for the defense?
No witnesses from the defense would rest, Your Honor.
All right. Go ahead.
People would move for bind over on an amended information, that being work counts as charged as well as an added count 5 of bank robbery, that being contrary to MCL 750.531, as well as felony firearm for that bank robbery, that being contrary to MCL 750.227B.
750227.
227B, yes.
227B. And what was the The first pack,
The bank robbery pack was 750.531.
531. All right.
Your Honor, the court heard testimony today, and I guess in an alternative, because I believe there may be an argument about the armed robbery, I would also argue if the court is not inclined to bind over armed robbery, that the court could bind over on added count 7 of assault with intent to rob while armed. As there's a question about whether, well, no property was taken, but I believe there's a question about whether or not an actual taking is required for armed robbery. Regardless, I think the people have proven primarily the armed robbery, that being that the defendant went into this bank with a gun. I believe the testimony said he said something along the lines of, give me the money, or this is a holdup. And certainly that put both the teller as well as Ms. Hoff, just the bank patron, in fear. The felony firearm, of course, going along with the felonious assault, going along with the armed robbery. And there was a stipulation to the previous felony that would make him ineligible to possess a firearm, so I believe people have proven count 2 as well. And this happened at a bank, which is what gives cause for the added count 5, and then the felony firearm there being, again, use of a weapon or of a firearm during that bank robbery. I reserve the rest of my argument for rebuttal and move the court bind over on the amended information, adding those counts 5 and 6.
Your Honor, the defense would object to bind over. In making the bind over determination, I'd ask the court to consider the competency of the testimony with specific respect to identification of this defendant as the suspect in the alleged robbery. I'd also ask the court to consider, with respect to what is charged as count 2, felon in possession of a firearm, the people do not need to show that a firearm is operable, but they do have to show some evidence that it was in fact a firearm defined as a weapon designed or intended to propel a dangerous projectile by explosive gas or air. Your Honor, I'd ask the court to consider the lack of testimony we have with respect to the design and construction of what is alleged to be a firearm in this case.
Well, I saw it, and so wouldn't that really be a question of fact?
I'd ask the court to consider it in making the bind over decision, just based on the weight of the evidence at examination.
Wasn't an answer, but wouldn't go ahead, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's really all I have with respect to what I'd ask the court to consider at this juncture. I think identification is the number one thing that we'd ask the court to consider, followed by what is alleged to be a firearm. Just the weight of the evidence on that, I think, goes to certainly count 2, but I'd also ask the court to consider it in count 1, armed robbery, and the added count.
So for purposes of preliminary examination, if I, as to the issue of identification, a 99.5% by the individual's first cousin isn't enough for bind over, is what you're indicating?
We'd ask if the court's inclined to bind over that it be over our objection.
That's always the case, but go ahead.
Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time. Those are the considerations we'd ask the court to make.
All right. Thank you. Anything additional from the people?
Your Honor, I don't think there's much else to add. The court pointed out the witness, who has known the defendant for decades, said with 99.5% certainty the individual that was in the photograph that was on video committing this offense was the defendant. I would again move the court to bind over on the amended information.
All right. Court's going to take a brief. I'll come back and give you my decision in a second. Court does recall the case of the people, State of Michigan versus Kyle Zimmerman.
Good afternoon again, Your Honor. Raymond Cook for the people.
And Alex Warren Green on behalf of the government. Government, can you stand and state your name?
Kyle Zimmerman. Michael Gaddy, Assistant Public Defender.
The court, having gone through all of the evidence in this case, having heard all of the testimony in this case, I'll start out with count 1 because there it was sort of raised by the people, not necessarily raised by the defense, where there's a taking away of the very fact that there was no money which was taken. I don't think there's any bearing on the armed robbery charge. In looking at what I could see, and the court does believe there was and would have been a larceny, and maybe uncompleted at some point, but the court does believe that the people have shown enough for the offense of armed robbery occurred. That goes with as to all of the offenses. But let me address one thing, and that is primarily the identification of the defendant. And the court did take to heart the defense's argument regarding regarding his identification. What is very clear from the detective's testimony, he didn't hesitate one bit to say that it was Kyle Zimmerman. He also, from this court standpoint, gave enough sort of life context to his ability to identify him without going into the specifics. There are numerous points at which he's seen him. He's known him for 45 years. He also indicates that it's a few months before this that he saw him. And also, again, and the court isn't taking into account that he may have been in the jail there, but he made reference to the fact that he's seen them when there was discussion regarding sunglasses or the wearing of glasses, as opposed to not wearing glasses. So the court found his testimony extremely credible, particularly with reference to the identification. And then also with that identification, the context by which the detective is even notified leads you, I think, additionally substantiates his identification, because there are these text messages that Mr. William Zimmerman had testified to, and a number of things that in this court's mind are going on there. For the purposes of preliminary examination, I think that a 99.5% identification of this Joe as the person who is in Exhibit 2 is enough for the people to show the second prong that it was this defendant that committed the offenses. The people have also shown, so the people have shown the armed robbery. There was the stipulation that the defendant would be a prohibited person. And so the people have sustained their burden as count 2. What is clear also with reference to the firearm, yes, there may be a question of its nature that the people might have to overcome, but it may be a question of fact as to whether or not it constitutes a firearm, or that the statute is raised by the defense. But this court believes that's a question of fact to be decided by the finder of fact. When I saw the clip, there is no doubt in my mind that what I saw and what I would think that to be would be a firearm capable of inflicting harm upon another person. So I'll leave that to the trial court to decide. There is also then the felonious assault charge, which I think that they have shown regarding certainly Ms. Hoff. Also, given where this had occurred, the nature of what the defendant in this case was attempting to do, the court will add the bank robbery charge, and would also, with the bank robbery being the predicate felony, but also I guess the armed robbery could be the predicate felony, will add the bank robbery, think, yes, the armed robbery is already included in count 3. I will add count 6 of felony firearm with the predicate offense being the bank robbery charge. So therefore, for those reasons and taking into account all of the testimony, court would find the defendant over to stand trial on all 6 charges.
The information waived reading and statement.
And then having waived formal reading, standing mute to all 6 counts, court will enter a not guilty plea. Pre-trial in this matter will be set
August 13th at 1:30 with Judge Slay.
August 13th, 2026, 1:30 before Judge Slay. And we'll continue.
Your Honor, I have a copy of the amended information that has been signed.
You have? Oh, wonderful. I messed this part up. You signed it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Bond will continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
In this preliminary examination of the people versus Kyle Zimmerman, the court faced a key question: whether the evidence was strong enough to move the case forward. Prosecutors presented testimony from a bank customer and teller who described a masked individual entering the bank, displaying what appeared to be a firearm and demanding money. Surveillance footage was also introduced as evidence. The defense challenged the identification, arguing that witnesses never completed a formal lineup and questioned whether the person in the video could be reliably identified. However, the prosecution relied heavily on Detective Adam Androvic, who testified that he recognized Zimmerman from the images and identified him with high confidence based on decades of familiarity. After reviewing the testimony, Judge Simpson ruled that the evidence met the standard required at this stage. The court found that the identification evidence, witness accounts, video footage, and supporting circumstances were sufficient to move the case forward. The judge ordered Zimmerman to stand trial on 6 charges, including armed robbery, felony firearm-related charges, and additional counts connected to the alleged bank robbery. The case will now proceed toward trial, where the evidence will face further examination.